Missouri's latest offer at quarterback is a fast riser. He fits Missouri's system, and he could be coming off the board faster than you might expect. Let's talk about him and more right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. On today's program, I'm going to talk with Brian Smith about not only Michael Clayton II, Missouri's latest quarterback offer, also Matt Zollers at Elite 11, Javen Boggs, also going to get his perspective as the Locked On Noles host on what happens. Could Missouri get Orange Bowled, 2008 Orange Bowled, that is, at 10-2 this season? All that and more coming up right now. And back by popular demand, it is Brian Smith, the Scout Master here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the head of scouting, and a man who is all over the state of Florida, which is a good thing because the latest quarterback offer, really the quarterback offers in general from Missouri, have been coming from the state of Florida. The latest one to Michael Clayton II. What do you know about Michael Clayton, Brian?
I've known him for quite a while. He's a great kid. He was 6'3", 185, something like that as a freshman. Didn't look like one and certainly didn't throw like one. He's been training to play the spot a long time. He was at Edgewater High School in Orlando, and he just transferred to Seminole High School just north of the city, both prominent programs. And he's used to playing against top competition. Very smart kid, very cerebral, throws from the pocket, will make some plays on the roll, but mostly a pocket quarterback.
Well, good to hear. How does he compare, just out of curiosity, to Brady Hart, a guy that Missouri had offered recently, but now has committed to Michigan already really early in the process?
Hart is probably faster as a runner, but to be honest, this next class that these two young men are in the state of Florida is a foundational one. Like, that state doesn't produce quarterbacks very often. It is loaded this next year. So find a quarterback about every corner, and they're both elite players throwing the ball from the pocket, and they can move. Hart probably gets more recognition because he's at Cocoa. They won state, and he had a game he threw for 498 yards against St. Thomas Aquinas. I mean, that'll help your reputation. Whereas Edgewater is more of a power football team, and I think it's why Clayton transferred. He wanted to throw the ball a little bit more, go to Seminole, and they got a lot of athletes too. Really good football program. But his arm strength, his style of play, and everything fits what Missouri does. And I think he would be a great fit up there in Missouri.
Interesting. And by the way, just quickly here, I do want to remind you, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply, and as usual, my segments with Brian are brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And Brian, since we're talking about 2026, I'm just kind of fascinated by the quarterback market right now, considering Brady Hart has not even started his junior year of high school yet, and he's already committed to the University of Michigan. That tells me that this market, especially at the quarterback spot, is going to move really, really quickly. Does it seem to you, you've been covering this for years, does it seem like it's moving even faster than ever?
Answer is yes, and there's a specific reason why, and that's signing date this year will be December again. But for that class, it'll be the first one, barring something, the NCAA changes again, will be next summer. So the process is getting sped up based on the calendar. And that position, as we know, most teams take one. Sometimes they take two at the spot. If you don't go ahead and grab a spot at the school you really think you're going to go to, you might get passed up. So that's what happened. Noah Grubbs committed to Notre Dame, and then they just started going boom, boom, boom. Griffin committed to Florida. Hart committed to Michigan. It's going to be a bunch more kids like that. By the end of July, I expect about half the kids in the class of 26 are the elite kids to be done at quarterback.
So knowing Michael Clayton II a little bit, do you think he's a guy who's going to make his decision maybe before the end of this summer?
It's possible. Again, it's not what you necessarily want to do, but you're not sure what, like Missouri offers X number of kids. If there's 2 or 3 other kids they will take a commitment from and they're taking one, do you wait?
Right.
Or, I already know one kid in particular that waited. I ain't going to get specifics, that waited longer than he should, and he lost his spot.
Right.
And then some other kids, like, it just is what it is. So Clayton's a really smart kid, but I'm not sure what his timeline was because all this just started in the last few weeks. He may have to adjust.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's Missouri or it's not. I don't know, but like he's visited Auburn and Florida State and all these different places. He's got a lot of options. But if you wait, there may not be anything that you really wanted at the top of your board. So we're in new territory here. The signing date moved up, changes quarterback recruiting a whole bunch.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's just amazing how quickly these young men have to make these decisions, especially like you say, if their profile suddenly shoots up, their timeline's going to completely change by a few months, maybe even up to a year or something like that. It's pretty wild to think about to be a teenager and having those type of decisions, money being thrown your way now and everything. But you know what? I guess I just love talking quarterbacks. What can I say? Matt Zollers out there, a guy we've talked about quite a bit, Brian. I know we're both fans of his potential, to be sure. Seemingly everybody is, and everybody's hopping on that bandwagon. But I'm just curious, you see these reports now, been one day at the Elite 11 camp for Matt Zollers. You see rankings thrown out, observations. How much stock do you put into these camps, especially based on written reports that aren't your own personal observations?
Well, I've got 2 parts of that because I go to a ton of Elite 11 stuff, and I've been to the finals before. Either you see the kids throw live or you don't. And they throw hundreds of passes at these events. Elite 11 is different than anything else. It's very much a structural thought process, different drills that help you simulate real game situations. They have stuff we don't even get to see as media. They do chalkboard with them, talking about schemes and blitz packages and stuff. So part of the rankings are stuff that we don't even get to see in the media. You got to take that into it. I used to talk with Trent Dilfer about it. He used to run it. Now he's the coach at UAB. But
right.
I don't think you should discount it, but it's not the end-all, be-all either, because when you're throwing a pass at a camp, there's not a 290-pound guy trying to hit you in the chest. There's no way to do evaluations of quarterbacks unless they can possibly be hit, which coaches try to eliminate completely. So you're always guessing with them. But the kids that are the best are the ones that have trained for this kind of event and have been to several of them, like Juju Lewis. He's been trained in drills forever. He's as good a on-air quarterback as you're ever going to see at the prep level. And he was dominant yesterday at the accuracy check. Okay, great.
Sure.
But he's also done it against guys in Georgia in 7A competition. I'm more interested in that. That's always the number one criteria. When you're about to get hit, can you deliver the ball?
Right.
So it's the extra is kind of how I put it. It's just that there's no way to evaluate quarterbacks the way we really want because you can't have them get hit. So this is the next best thing.
Interesting. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, but I wasn't aware that sort of the steps that Elite 11 had taken to sort of simulate real football and go beyond just, hey, throw against air, put some stuff on the chalkboard. That's interesting. I didn't know that, but I'm glad to see we're mostly aligned on our thoughts on sort of the observations coming out of there. I'm with you. Until the real bullets start flying, that's a tough position to evaluate, as we've talked about before. And you know what? Speaking of Brady Hart, his teammate down in Cocoa Beach, Javen Boggs, cut his consideration down to Missouri and UCF. Now it looks like the wide receiver, former Ohio State commit. Give me just a little bit on Javen Boggs, because I know you've seen him play in person too.
That is a kid with phenomenal hands. Not good, phenomenal hands. He just has a knack for the timing when to jump, for the ability to use his body. He's a strong kid. For the ability to use his body as a shield, and then just like catch the ball naturally, not just with two. He makes one-handed catches look normal, which they are not. I saw him do it at Under Armour this year, so it's probably the best play at the Miami Under Armour this year. Guy was on him. He didn't have a great pass to catch. He could only get one hand on it, and he just like grabbed it like a golf ball. Right. It was incredible. Like his hand strength is so powerful, and he didn't even care. He just ran back the huddle. No big deal. So he's used to making those plays. And he's also the reason Hart, the quarterback we mentioned recently that committed to Michigan, they played together at Cocoa, that's his guy.
Yeah.
Like you throw it up to him against top competition, more often than not, Boggs is going to win. He is a very, very talented guy. And I think he could play pretty early. He's a little more advanced as a route runner than some other kids, so he's probably going to help. It doesn't matter if it's UCF or Missouri. He'll make a contribution in 2025.
And of course, I love talking recruiting with Brian, but I also wanted to get his national and also Florida State perspective on what the committee's looking for in the playoff. Does 10-2 do it for Missouri? We've talked about that quite a bit on the program. Let's hear what Brian has to say. But first, you guys know I love to golf, right? That's pretty obvious. I think I could die a happy man if somebody one time in my life would simply say the words, John Miller is a stick. Well, by golly, I think PXG is going to help me get there. And I think they can do the same for you as well. I'm telling you, getting fitted clubs is one of those things that, if you're a beginner, can absolutely take your game to the next level. And I'll tell you this, PXG made me a believer. They'll do the same for every golfer in Kansas City. Visit pxg.com/LockedOnMizzou to schedule your fitting at PXG Kansas City. It's 7517 West 119th Street in Overland Park. Get fitted for any club, and you'll get a dozen golf balls free. I'm playing those golf balls right now. Let me tell you, they perform fabulously around the greens and in terms of distance off the tee. Again, that's pxg.com/LockedOnMizzou to schedule your fitting. pxg.com/LockedOnMizzou. Limit 1 dozen golf balls per person. Promotion ends June 30th. Other terms and conditions may apply. See store for details. And passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With more than 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. With all the prices you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Man, I'm having a one-on-one battle in the secondary with a fly right now for those of you who are watching on YouTube. I think I'll keep powering through here. This thing keeps trying to fly into my mouth, but you know what? Again, we're just going to power through here. I've talked a lot about on this program, and there's been a lot of debate. What is it going to take for Missouri to make the college football playoff? Well, for those of you who are unaware, Brian is the host of Locked On Seminoles. Well, Florida State really got the raw end last year, the short end of the stick last year. I thought it'd be interesting to get Brian's perspective because he's dived real deeply, I'm sure, into what the committee thinks, what they're looking for. A lot made of Missouri's relatively easy schedule, still a top 30 projected schedule, but the lowest in the SEC. What do you make of all this? Do you think Missouri gets in at 10-2? And do you think it matters who they beat and lose to?
I do, to a certain degree. You need a quality win, especially if you can get one on the road that has cachet. And let me define that for people. And Missouri fans can start throwing things now if they want. There's a very limited list of schools you can beat that people really care about. It's just true. If your schedule is lighter in a given year, if you lose that game to that marquee team, then who did you beat is the conversation that goes against you. Well, if you don't beat Georgia or Ole Miss or LSU, somebody with cachet like that, how does that work in your favor? So I need to know the teams they beat. And then if you do lose, did you lose by 3 or did you lose by 17? Don't get beat bad. So if you've got a lighter schedule, they need to lose 2 games at most, and those need to be close games. If they played a great schedule in like the top 5 scale, like if you've seen Florida's schedule this year, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's absurd.
Yeah, if you go 10-2 against Florida's schedule, you're in.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and qualify that for you. It's just I don't know who designed that, but it was not a good schedule for them. But Missouri's got a really good team, 5th-year senior quarterback. They've got a good offensive line. They got a good defense. All those things are true, but Missouri doesn't have the same cachet as LSU does. I'm not
Sure.
going to believe the committee members are going to look at it equally. They say they do, but what else are they going to say when they're on TV? I think they need to be more impressive than other teams to guarantee it. Being in the SEC helps, but if what you're saying is true and they have the lightest schedule in the conference, that's not going to bode well at 10-2. That's still going to be close. I would vote them in, but that doesn't mean the committee.
What I'm hoping is, even though it's to be the lowest projected in the SEC right now, if the Tigers were, say, still in the Big 12, that would actually be the toughest schedule in the current Big 12.
That's why it's
so
that's
the thing. It's like, who are you comparing Missouri to?
Right.
That's the tough part about this debate, I think. If you knew Missouri was being compared to Ole Miss, well, that would be one thing, kind of like they would have been last year, just per se. But if they're being compared to, I don't know, say Utah or God forbid Kansas or something, if they have a big season in the Big 12 or something like that, well, I think you would have to give Missouri the edge then. So an interesting conversation. We'll obviously get there eventually. And a lot of interesting stuff happening in Florida specifically that I happened to bring up when I was in Destin on vacation. Some new Florida NIL laws coming out. Do you think this could affect like Javen Boggs, for instance? He's Central Florida, his biggest or Missouri's biggest competition right now, it would seem. He's going to announce on July 4th, I believe. What do you make of just all of this in general?
Well, first off, they're trying to make it more competitive for everybody, but here's the bottom line. One of my buddies tries to help some of these kids from a legal standpoint. Except for the elite kids, and Boggs is one of the few that it could matter for. Very few are really going to benefit from this beyond a few $100s. It's just reality. Somebody, a local bank or restaurant might give you a few $100 to help them or whatever. That's great. But these big NIL deals, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, that stuff for like Reebok and Nike, and that's different. And you've got to be in college for them to promote that because it's too localized. But that doesn't mean the state couldn't come up with something for Boggs to go to UCF because they'd like him to stay local, kind of like the state of Missouri has for Missouri.
Sure.
I just haven't heard anything on that scale. The state of Missouri is the most unique. These are two separate entities. Florida's is more generic for whatever you want. If you stay in state, though, Missouri takes care of you in a different way. So I don't think Boggs is going to look at it that way. And UCF's NIL is not in the same stratosphere as Missouri's. I don't think it's going to have a huge impact.
Yeah, it's just there's such a different dynamic in Florida. Of course, Florida has just oodles of football talent. But going along with that, so many Division I programs as well. You can't get aligned behind one program like you can, like your legislature, for example, like you can behind Missouri, because they're the flagship institution. Nobody
100%.
else is even close. Missouri State's going to move up to D1 in a couple years or something. Okay, congratulations. That's just not the same thing. And I just don't even think that's a good idea, honestly. I think they should try. Yeah, just try to get better at FCS would have been my thing if I were a Missouri State person. But, that's just my thing. And you know what? I do want one more question for you, one more little topic for you, Brian, before I get you out of here. Jamarian Morrow, a running back that Missouri just took from basically Alabama, and I can't even remember the other team off the top of my head who was in real play before Morrow as a running back. My question is, though, more generally, considering Missouri's success in the running game with Cody Schrader last year, a former walk-on, that outside zone scheme, which seemingly a lot of NFL teams are going toward. I think Brandon Jones, a really good offensive line coach. Frankly, why wouldn't a stud running back, especially an outside zone kind of friendly running back, why wouldn't they want to play for the Tigers at this point?
I think it's just because it's new, but your point is right. I mean, what he did last year's runner, that's a dude. He was running over guys against Georgia, against everybody else, and the offensive line moved people. The scheme works. It's proven for many different levels. And Chip Kelly used a lot of outside zone concept when he was at Oregon. And he's used it other places too. I'm a little surprised by it, but it only takes one guy. That's Schrader's a great story because, what school was it he was at? I can't remember. Some itty bitty.
Truman State in Kirksville, Missouri. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, what? I never heard of it. So he's a great story, but they need one guy to break through, a top running back. And once that happens, I think it would happen over and over again. I don't know why, but kids would rather be fourth string at Georgia. It's just true. I don't understand it. I would rather go play, but that's just me. you tell me if you've got a better idea, but that's just my opinion.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of that's sort of the portal with how it's balancing things out, and why Missouri's been a net beneficiary to me is because some of those guys, coming out of high school, they all think, yep, they don't think they're going to be fourth string at Georgia. They think they're going to be the man. But then after a year or two, they go, maybe Missouri isn't so bad. So hopefully the Tigers will continue to be a beneficiary of the portal. And by the way, if you want to check out, if you happen to be a Florida State fan and a Missouri fan, heck, I know some in my life I can think of right off the top of my head. Check out Brian on Locked On Seminoles. Just does a great job on everything. Check him out on X at FBScout_Florida. Brian, thanks as always for your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, as I've discussed a lot here on the program lately, Missouri in a lot of big-time head-to-head battles with some blue bloods for recruits in football. Unfortunately, though, it just seems like the Tigers can't get a victory over LSU. Missouri lost a heartbreaker on the field last year to the Bayou Bengals. Also lost its defensive coordinator, Blake Baker, to LSU as well. Now Carius Curne, a decommit from Arkansas, offensive lineman. Missouri had a good shot, was definitely in there. Curne ultimately decides to commit to LSU today. So usually when a guy these days, they decommit once, that's about the only decommitment you're going to get, it would seem. That seems to be the trend. So I would say Curne is a solid LSU Tiger at this point. Frankly, you win some, you lose some. Not a huge deal in the grand scheme of things, because Missouri, hey, if they're doing really well at one spot, it's got to be offensive line right now. Of course, receiver isn't too far off either. Talked about Javen Boggs with Brian Smith. Several other players are about, say, 4 or 5 players, I believe, that are big-time wide receiver prospects for Missouri going to be in town this weekend. So who knows? We're definitely on commitment watch this weekend, though Javen Boggs, again, not making his decision until Independence Day. By the way, one interesting note here to go out on, at least in my humble opinion, I did complain recently in the last few months on the program about how I really believe Nike, yes, the Nike swoosh on my shirt as we speak, maybe a little bit ironically there, because I'm about to criticize Nike once again, because I just believe that their Mizzou offerings have not really been up to snuff, especially considering where this Mizzou football program appears to be going. I think that if Missouri is not going to get better merchandise for the fans, hey, Nike's come through with a lot of different uniform combinations, I suppose, but and some of the stuff that the coaching staff and the players, that kind of merch that they get to wear is often really nice and stuff that I would absolutely buy if they would put it on sale to the general public. But unfortunately, the offerings from Nike just haven't been all that inspiring in recent years for Missouri. The Tigers seem like a bit of an afterthought. I compared it to Ohio State last time around, all the offerings that the Buckeyes have, a team that Missouri obviously played and beat in the Cotton Bowl this past January. Well, there's just no comparison. Ohio State has 12 to 20 times the amount of offerings, and most of them are much more appealing, quite honestly, too. So I think Missouri should use their position, look to move on from Nike if they can't find anything else. Well, obviously this is not going to be Missouri's main uniform provider, but the Tigers, their team store just put out a teaser that they're going to announce a new partnership with Lululemon. Of course, Lululemon, for all you ladies out there in particular, you 4%ers out there of the audience, I'm sure you're well aware of Lululemon. Of course, they make yoga pants among many different products. But you know what? They've also made a push for the men's market here lately as well. In fact, a couple years ago for Christmas, my wife bought me a couple of pairs of their golf pants, their golf slacks, if you will. I really like them. They're comfortable. They're stretchable. They're everything. They're handsome. So Lululemon, I think, in particular, this is exciting for all you ladies out there. I think the guys' offerings have left a lot to be desired in terms of Mizzou merch from Nike. Boy, the ladies, they've really, really been behind. To me, there's almost nothing interesting out there for the ladies from Nike. So to me, this Lululemon thing, hey, great idea. To me, everything in branding matters, and especially having fans who look good in your merchandise. What in the heck is wrong with that? We'll also give you money for it too. So to me, this is a win-win, a good partner for Missouri. And again, Nike, step your game up, or I'm more than willing to move on to Under Armour or Adidas, Puma, whoever it might be that's willing to actually step up their merchandise game for the Tigers. So anyway, thanks as always for joining me here on Locked On Mizzou. I believe that'll be my last episode this week. We're in off-season mode here. Certainly going to get you at least 3 episodes next week, though, so don't worry. More than likely here during the off-season as well. I'll just tell you, it's probably going to be a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Thursday kind of deal. Friday shows, for whatever reason, just don't seem to do quite the numbers. I'll just be open and honest with you there. So that's probably looking like the schedule here until the end of July. Going to get you at least 3 a week, I promise. So until next time, I am John Miller. Thanks as always for listening to Locked on Mizzou.